Hey everyone, Ben Coomber Radio, episode no freaking idea. I am backloading shows because I've got a string of incredible guests line up. And I have an incredible guest today. It's another transatlantic show. We've had to time ourselves. Of course, we've got it wrong. You always get it wrong when you call America. But we've got it. The man is here. I'm a big fan of this guy. He's a big guy. He's way bigger than me. Elliott Hulse, how you doing?
Great, thanks. It's a pleasure to be here, Ben.
Jot, sitting in front of you, you're so well groomed. I look like such a scruffy bastard sitting here in my English cottage and with my side part in, and you well, Americans must like that though.
I shaved today. That's about it.
Yeah, see, I haven't shaved in about 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
I just got grown up being dragged through a hedge. What can I say? So, I mean, I'm a huge fan of your YouTube stuff. I assume most people know you from the growth of yourself within the industry via YouTube. That's been your medium to speak to people.
Yeah, it's been the one thing that I've focused on the most. So I basically, for lack of a better term, put all my eggs in that basket because I started out as a gym owner and strength coach, and then online entrepreneur, publisher, publisher of newsletters and affiliate marketing. And I've done so many different things, and there's just that one thing that I knew I could do better than anyone else, and that was talk in front of the camera. So I kind of scaled everything down to the point where I could just focus on that, and it seems to be working.
Nice, it's good. I think I'm not sure where I saw it. You got a letter from one of the big dogs at YouTube saying, you know, thanks for your contribution. We love your work and stuff. That's cool.
Yeah, it is really cool. I mean, I haven't gotten an award since like college football, so to be recognized for anything is pretty cool.
Oh, nice. So for people that are listening, don't know who you are, who is Elliott Hulse?
It's a good question. I'm still trying to figure it out. And that's kind of a part of the allure to my channel because it's just this dance between me and the world I live in, and then the presentation of it through the videos. I don't know who I am, and I present my content in such a way that I'm inviting my audience to go on this journey with me to discover what that actually is. And there's some really interesting things that we talk about on my channels.
I think that's one of the reasons why I resonate with your channels, because in the fitness industry, we're so used to seeing the superficial, you know, the body, the biceps, the muscles, the lifting.
Yep.
And a lot of the guests that I like to have on my show, I like to kind of get down to the person and also get down to the point that behind every person that's successful and does stuff, there's core beliefs, there's core values, there's consistency, there's honesty, there's no ego. And that comes across amazingly in your videos because everything is beautifully raw. There's no bullshit. And if there's one thing the fitness industry needs more, it's less bullshit.
Yeah. I got as sick as the bullshit as everyone else. And I just almost like flipped my lid one day and was like, you know what? I'm just going to take this wild gamble and just be myself with no pretense. And it seems to be working out. So it's very difficult, we live in a world where it's capital, we live in a capitalistic system. So you're always having to sell. And in order to sell, we've been taught to believe that you've got to market. And marketing is a lot of deceiving. You're constantly deceiving people you talked about it before we even got on the call, what kind of snake oil do you want to present? And it's like, well, you know what? I think I am my snake oil. I am my content. I am my context. I am my product. And every time I turn on the camera and look at it and speak, I'm selling this. And it's very difficult to lie about this. It's because you can see me, you can hear me. And one thing is for sure, you can't fool people with the way you look, you see? So my energy comes across and it's always authentic. Because it's me. It's what you get.
Good. I like that. So in terms of you, what's your journey? What got you into the fitness industry? Where did it come from?
Both my parents are from Belize, which is a third world country, essentially. You know, it's in Central America, and my dad grew up
I've been
with.
there.
Yeah, have you? Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, you can
Belize
imagine,
City. It's like one of the most dangerous places in the world.
Belize?
Belize City, the actual city.
Oh, in the city. Of
It's
course.
crazy dangerous.
It can be. Well, my dad grew up in the jungle. He grew up, not in the city. My mom grew up in the city, but my dad grew up literally barefoot. He didn't have shoes, and in fact, he was kind of pissed off when he came to America and was like, "You gotta wear shoes all the time." Like he just couldn't figure it out. It's so funny because we have like these fads where like everybody thinks like, it's brand new to be barefoot, and they've got barefoot shoes and like barefoot clubs, and it's like my dad got here is like, "You guys wear fucking shoes. What's going on? This doesn't make any sense." He was a little aggravated actually, and grew up eating, whatever the land produced. If he could pick it off a tree, or if it fell on the ground, or if he could chase it and catch it, that's what he ate. And that was the life that, he grew up with. And my uncle, who was my mom's brother, growing up as a boy in that environment, he tells us a lot of stories about how if you weren't physically strong, if you couldn't climb the tree, if you couldn't swing, if you couldn't swing on the vine, if you couldn't wrestle, then you just weren't going to survive. Like you were just, it wasn't a matter of like, I'm better than you and, a lot of the ego stuff that we deal with in schools and boys today. It was like, well, you're just not going to survive. You can't hang with us. Everybody's swimming, everybody's climbing, and that's life. So having those type of mentors growing up, I grew up in Brooklyn, but I was born in Brooklyn, grew up on Long Island, but having a dad like that, ran around barefoot because there were no shoes, and an uncle who was like, well, you've got to be strong, otherwise you don't exist, put me in a situation, and my brother's in a situation where it was just second nature. It was our nature to be physically active and heavily invested in eating foods that made us feel good. My father laughs sometimes when we talk about like organic food and stuff, and he's like, there was no organic food. There was just food. There was what came from the earth. And now, that we live in a country where what we eat and we call food really isn't food at all. Because my dad, he rants all the time about how what we call food isn't food. And even like what looks like a chicken is like, yeah, it looks like a chicken, right? But it's not a chicken because I can taste it and tell you right now that there's something funny about this. And obviously it's because of the way it's raised and the chemicals that they use and the hormones and so on and so forth. So a lot of what people read and write books about and they do studies on, and they have certifying bodies to ensure, and we have podcasts and all types of experts to support. I come from an environment where that's just the way it was, and everything else was weird. Everything else was new. My parents didn't need any kind of green movement. I think I remember recently one of the guys from the Duck Dynasty was like, we were green before green was green. We didn't need any green products. It was like, this is just the way it is. So that was the type of mindset and environment I grew up in. So obviously I was stronger, I was faster, I was much more rugged, agile, energetic than all the kids that I grew up with. And being a little boy, you quickly earn respect when you've got that type of physical stature. The only problem was still being of savage blood and idea. I didn't do really well in school because it was like, well, these people want me to sit down and like for 8 hours a day and not talk and don't get up and don't be so energetic. So that's kind of where, I had sort of a problem growing up. So as an adult, now it's all about physical activity for me. And it turns out that I'm not as dumb as they thought I was because I couldn't sit down. In fact, people want to know what I have to say because I don't sit down.
I love that.
I just went in a big circle there.
No, I love that because I know so many people. You look at all the world's best entrepreneurs, and they all got told in school like they were never going to make anything of themselves. They'll be a garbage man. You read stories about Richard Branson, Alan Sugar. All the people that are especially famous to us in the UK, and they're all now like, yeah, see you later.
Yeah, that's pretty much how it is.
But your creativity makes you now. It's fantastic. I love that. So, I mean, again, I keep coming back to your videos because that's the main way that you present yourself. But when you watch your videos, you see that everything that you do comes from there's a streak of consistency in all your videos, which really shows like your core philosophies or your grounding. If you were to kind of explain or sum up some of your drive and your motivation and the things that kind of underline who you are and what you do, what do you think they'd be?
Well, that consistency that you're experiencing in the videos, if I had to wrap it up in a singular statement about what it is I want people to experience, to understand, to experience, and then to obviously share, it's this reality that we are our bodies and that we should come back into relationship with it and begin to trust it again. See, we've become such an abstract society. We only have trust in the head. We've come to a place where we only have trust in the logic that the cerebral cortex could provide, and have completely ignored, perhaps even demonized. Yes, we have demonized, because look at what our religions have said about sex and the body and nature. What happens in our heart and what happens in our gut, what happens in our sexuality, what happens in our bodies. There is a profound brilliance that animates us without logic having to do it. What I want you to tap into is that brilliance that beats your heart without you having to think about it. That brilliance that knows exactly what enzymes to produce in order to digest your food. That brilliance that digests your foods, that grows a baby inside you, that replaces cells as they die. You're not doing that. There's another part of you that this part of you doesn't actively engage in, but yet makes magnificent things happen. It's your body. There is a brain, there's an intelligence, there's a sensitivity within your body that I really am excited about experiencing in myself and inviting other people to at least consider and then perhaps experience themselves.
Do you think part of this, and you know, we're obviously going a little deep now, do you think part of this comes back to people not loving themselves?
It comes back to the stories that we've been told about what we are. You know, if you just look at the creation stories that we hold dear to our hearts, regardless whether or not we call ourselves, you know, Judeo-Christian or not, these ideas are bedded into our consciousness, especially in the West, that we were somehow created separate from nature and landed here. Like God made us somewhere else, and we came from outer space, and we just kind of like landed here. And we're like in this foreign land where there are animals and shit and like nature that we have to tame and we have to control, and in essence have come to demonize so that we can manipulate it. Puts us in a situation where everything that is spontaneous in the body, everything that truly comes from nature in our body, everything that is truly of the Holy Spirit, or God, if you will, that happens below the neck, is seen as something that needs to be whipped and controlled and contained, and thus demonized, so that we can fight against it. We think we love our bodies. You know, we place the our mental manifestation of what is sexual on a pedestal. You know, what we think a sexual woman looks like and what it is to be a sexy man. But really, it's an abomination against what really is raw, real, stinky, smelly, slimy guts and puke of the body. This is a totally different animal, if you will. We don't even like that term, animal. We think we're so special. We're so much more than the horse and the pig and the cow, but yet they've got a heart that beats itself without them having to think about it too. The same way that we do. We shit just like they shit. We fuck just like they fuck. We are animal, but we hate animal. We have subdued animal, and that part of us has been castrated from how we go about our lives.
And that's just developed because we now live in we've developed into a civilized world. But we are animals in a modern world. And it comes back to all the things that you've mentioned about, your dad, barefoot, organic food, all that crap. That is just the world that animals live in, and now we're civilized, or apparently we're civilized. There's a lot of shit out there that would make you think twice about that. That everything has to be quantified now, and has to have a reason behind it. And as a result of that, no one really knows where they are in time or space, or is happy with what's going on a lot of the time in their lives.
No, they don't feel. We don't feel our bodies. There's so many people that are desensitized from the emotion in the body, from the feelings in the body, and they wonder why they feel as if there's no purpose. There's no purpose to life because you're not living. Because life happens in your body, not in your head. So many people are depressed because they're way up in their fucking head, and they've literally depressed the energies of the body. The body has become a slave to the brain, to the head brain. And you wonder why you're not excited about anything. You wonder why you can't feel good about yourself. There are no feelings there. There's just neurosis.
See, and now what we're coming back to is the brain that controls everything. So currently what I'm doing in the UK, we've written a system. You've heard of Weight Watchers?
Yes.
Yeah. So in the UK, it's huge, and me and another guy have written a program, and we're going to release it out across the UK, just like Weight Watchers. We've already got loads of coaches. We've signed them up. We've got a program, and the first 6 weeks of our program with anyone, it all talks about mindset. And when we ran our pilot group, everyone really, really struggled for the first 3 weeks because everyone was confronted with the fact that where you are right now, you are responsible. Every action that you've taken for the last 40 years, it's no one else's fault, it's your fault. And it was really hard for people to handle, but the way people have opened up afterwards, the diet and the exercise and all that other stuff has literally been a walk in the park. People aren't even thinking about it, they're just doing it because all of a sudden now they accept that the action that they take today will have a profound effect on tomorrow.
Right. The stories we tell ourselves, as the myths that guide us as a culture, civilization, and the stories we tell ourselves individually as a product of myths, guide our lives in a profound way.
And the sooner people realize that, the sooner they'll get more out of their life. So let's
right. Go ahead.
Go on, no, there's a bit of signal lag there. Go on, sorry.
It's not that we don't know this at a visceral level, because if you read or even movies, like, for example, look at like Star Wars. And we love Star Wars because Star Wars was actually written by George Lucas, who was inspired by Joseph Campbell. And Joseph Campbell are you familiar with Joseph Campbell? Joseph Campbell studied mythology and the stories that humankind has told itself since the beginning of time. I mean, he goes back to like the ancient religions of the East, Native Americans, very well versed in the Judeo-Christian traditions. I mean, the guy is brilliant. But there are some recurring themes in these stories throughout the world, throughout the human consciousness. And one that we're all probably very familiar with if you watch Star Wars is this idea that there's a force within your body that can be trusted. And if you let go and allow the force to carry you, Luke, let the force guide you. There is an energy that happens down here, and then there is a father figure. Darth Vader, I am your father, Luke. That is a part of this, they call it the dark side in the movie, but it's essentially society. It's essentially the empire. It is the social construct. And there's a lot to be gained for going to the dark side. I am your father, Luke, the head, the father. When we do this, Father, Son, Holy Ghost. The Father up here, Holy Ghost is down here. Holy Ghost, force, spirit, energy happens down here. That story is an ancient story that invites us to trust the Holy Spirit, to trust the energy, the force, the God that's in us, that, if you will, the vegetative nervous system, the autonomic nervous system. They call it the autonomic nervous system because it's fucking automatic. You're not doing it. As opposed to leaning or going to the dark side. I am your father. the Father, which is purely head games. It's a manifestation of the neocortex. It's in many ways can become the dark side of human consciousness, the human experience.
I suppose all too many of us really, this dark side that we talk about, the psyche, everyone's led by that, and it's probably for most people an over-analysation of everything in the world around them, rather than being free within it, rather than constantly thinking about it. Because how many clients do you coach? I don't know, depending on the people that you do coach, especially people that I've coached in the past. You know, oh, I can't get to sleep. I lay awake at night just thinking about stuff. And I'm like, how about we stop worrying about shit? What processes do we need to go through to release the mind of the world around us and actually just live in it? Be a part of it.
Right. It's the stories. Again, it's the stories we told ourselves. You know, for some strange reason, which, you know, we could speculate as to why, we've twisted the creation story that guides the West. The creation story that guides the West, regardless of your religious persuasion, or even if you call yourself an atheist, it is the story that gave us our paradigm that allows us to live the way we do in Western civilization. And that is where there was a God that created a man, and then there was a man against nature. And then man partook of a particular type of understanding or knowledge or wisdom that was available only to God. And then that pit man against God and God against man, because now we're enemies. And man or causes nature to submit to himself, and he's an enemy to nature. So we're living in a world where there's a God that hates us and is angry, and we're scared of and against, and it's against us, this nature, the strange surrounding that we're in. So if you're proceeding from a base paradigm that says that God is bad, you are bad, you're sinful, nature is bad, then how could you ever experience anything good? So when you tell people, hey, the stories that you're telling yourself about why you're fat, overweight, sick, sad, and depressed don't support you, the very first thing you got to deal with is like, wait a second. Do you believe that you're a sinful person, that you were born in sin? Do you believe that you're bad by nature? And really the root issue, if you track it way back down, the root issue is I'm a bad person. God doesn't love me. Nature doesn't love me. I am sinful. I need to redeem. There's so much negativity towards the body. Of course it's fat, sick, and depressed.
But yet, like you say, that simple sentence that you just said, I am a bad person, I have created sins, that will make someone act and behave and live their life every day, every second, the way they think, because that is their underlying methodology, their paradigm. And this is why I love the work of Tony Robbins, because he talks so much about these simple processes that say, the reason why he can't get that, and that he wants is because he believes this. And it's usually just one sentence. But this one sentence controls their life because it is the one sentence that is their life.
Yeah, that's it. And it's a story. Tony Robbins calls it your story.
Yeah.
You know, you got to state your story and your strategy. And we tell ourselves some really fucked up stories.
But we have the power to choose not to.
Get it?
But everyone chooses. I said we have the power to choose not to tell ourselves these stories.
Yeah, you can reject those stories. And if you learn to reject it at a visceral level, you don't really have to do anything anymore because your belief, who you are, changes. What Ralph Waldo Emerson once said, that what you are, or he says, every action is measured by the sentiment from which it proceeds. It's not so much, see, we want strategies. We want the Father to keep guiding us. We want to use the power of the dark side to manipulate every single behavior in our lives. But when you begin to trust that you're a good person and you let down into your body, then that same part of you that beats your heart and digests your food begins manipulating the external environment in such a way. Your entire energy changes and good things start happening to you.
Nice. And this is why Tony Robbins, in my mind, is one of the most successful men on the planet, because he has the power to make people reprogram their brains. And the sooner people understand that if you program your brain, you can literally do anything you want. It won't happen next week, it won't happen next month, but 5, 10 years time, something truly incredible could come about.
Yeah.
So before people's brains melt, we'll move on to some practical elements. I put a few shouts out on Facebook, and that kind of formulated a few decent questions, which are kind of essentially your fans. Stuart Hayes asked, he said, you've got a long journey, you've been in the fitness industry a long time. If you could jump in the time machine and change something that you would think would affect your journey in a profound way, what would it be? So a lot of the time when I ask this question to people, a lot of people say, oh, I wish I'd realised that, yeah, and it could be quite simple. And I think your answer is going to be a bit more simple than people realise. But a lot of people might say, oh, I wish I realised I was intolerant to gluten when I was, 20 or whatever, things like that. But I think I get a feeling you're going to go a different route.
Well, because no one's going to like my answer. My answer is nothing. I wouldn't change a single thing.
I knew you'd say that. I knew you'd say that.
Why would I change anything? First of all, I enjoy my life as it is. And everything that's happened up until this point has brought me to where I am. So why would I fuck with that? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, there were a lot of things that weren't pleasurable. There were things that didn't feel good. But that's a part of life. See, if my entire life was quote unquote pleasurable up until this point, I'd probably have to create my own misery so that the contrast that's supposed to be there would balance out my life. So right now my life would probably be fucking miserable. If everything was perfect, and then now I'm 34 years old, I would be creating misery. I'd be a fucking alcoholic. I'd be doing something to balance that shit out. That's like saying, hey, imagine it was daytime for the past 34 years. I'd be like, I can't fucking stand it. Like, the earth is scorching. I need some darkness. I need the sun to go away. You imagine that? Yeah, imagine it was summer. We all love summer, right? No, bro. I need some fucking winter to balance this shit out. So as life has done this up until the point where I am, I'm grateful for every upswing and downswing. Because without the downswing, there is no fucking upswing. Why would I want to change anything? There's nothing I would change. In fact, you know what? I'd be grateful for some more downswings. Sometimes, perhaps my downswings were even harder. Maybe if I had more difficult challenges, that bounce back would have been higher. Who knows?
I love it. And I agree 100%. If people ask me a lot about business these days. They say, oh, what's your biggest, business lesson? How can I not make the same mistakes? And I'm like, you need to make those mistakes. You need to learn the error of your ways. We're developing several programs at the moment within my work, and I had a meeting this morning with a guy, and I was like, do you know what? We're going to make some mistakes. Don't be scared of that. We'll learn quickly. We'll burn our fingertips, but we'll be so much, richer, not financially, but kind of, emotionally and business-wise as a result of that. And this comes back to a different thing. It's kind of that no one ever does anything because of a fear of that something. So why don't you go and do that? Oh, I'm scared of failing. So what? What's wrong with failure? Because I bet you'll stand back up, you'll grow a bigger pair of balls, and you'll climb that ladder to a higher height. It's like in business. No businessman made his first business a roaring success.
You need those experiences. You need them just like we need nighttime. You need them just like we need catabolic and anabolic. You need it just like you need a flip side of the coin. You can't have one without the... It does not exist. You can't have black without white. Black is implicit with white. Like, they cannot exist without each other. There's always going to be contrast. We cannot survive without it. It's like the systole and diastole of your heart. What if you were just like, I only like it when my heart fills up with blood. I don't want it to beat. I mean, there's too much there going on. Like, I don't want it to squeeze in. It's hurtful. Like, that doesn't make sense. You need systole and diastole. You need left and right. You need up and down. You need female and male. Our biggest pain comes from this idea that we can have all one without the other. We can have all good without evil. Well, there is no good without evil. It just doesn't exist. Well, there'd be no contrast. So I embrace evil just as much as I embrace good. I mean, I think there's a part in the Old Testament, Elijah, where he's describing he's relaying God's message in some way, and he's saying that I am good, I am evil, I am all these things. We tend to forget that. God, the universe, nature, it's all these things.
I think it's because when people see other people in a position that they want to be in, they assume that everything in their life is good, and that they don't see all the hardship because their good is greater than their current good. And it's just about perception. It's,
totally.
And how much of perception in the fitness industry sets people up for failure. They perceive that they can have abs in 8 weeks, but they can't. So the only reason they failed is because they have the perception that they could achieve that. It wasn't the trainer's fault, it wasn't the diet's fault, it wasn't the training program's fault. It was just the initial perception from the outset.
And we got to hold up these neurotic ideas about what it is to live a healthy, fit life, to walk around with six-pack abs 12 months out of the year. It's kind of like saying, I wish it was summer times 12 months out of the year. You need times of catabolism, which is great. You're breaking down, you're burning some fat. There's times where you're going to store. You need to be a little puffy sometimes. But the whole idea that we've been conditioned with is that, like, you get lean and fit and you stay that way and uphold this particular image of yourself, and you cannot let go of that no matter what. You see, and that's very uncomfortable.
It's painful.
Oh, it's tremendous.
So, I think I'm going to second guess your answer. Ryan Davies asked, a lot of people that listen to my podcast are personal trainers in the UK, a lot of the fitness community. And Ryan Davies, he says, what's your number one tip for people that want to succeed in the fitness industry?
You know exactly what I'm going to say, and you said it just a few minutes ago, because it's business, and you've got to go and fail. Go fail fast. I think the saying is fail forward fast, and that's your quickest way to success. Go and make some mistakes. Don't wait until you have all the answers or you know the correct path or the way that is free of obstacles before you start taking some action. Go and be a bad trainer. Go and make some mistakes. Go and not get results for a while, but be very sensitive and aware of the process and be very in tune with what's happening along that journey and make adjustments as you go along. Because when you do reach that success, because that's very subjective, you'll look back in the same way that I look back, and you'll be so grateful for all those mistakes, because you'll be like, I don't just have knowledge. See, this is one of the things that we kind of screw up in the way we've been conditioned. I don't just have knowledge. I don't want fucking knowledge. Keep your knowledge. I want wisdom, because wisdom comes from my body. Wisdom comes from experience. I don't give a shit how many books you've read, how many studies you have, how you can regurgitate these big words in the most fantastic ways to dazzle the audience with your intelligence. What kind of wisdom do you have? Because all of that is borrowed knowledge. Again, it's referring to the Father once again, and not to the heart and to the Holy Spirit, to your balls. I want a lot of wisdom, and wisdom only comes from experience. And experience means getting your hands fucking dirty.
Nice. I couldn't have put that answer any better myself. And then also to add on to that, and you said it right within the first 5 minutes of this podcast, be yourself.
How, profound, right? It's like, that's the secret. Just be yourself. It sounds so cliche, because most people are so out of tune with what they are, who they are, or the experience of being a human being, that when you say just be yourself, it usually comes out real awkward, because it's like, well, you look at other people and what they are, and then you measure yourself up and compare yourself, and then you create contrast, or you do what you've been told up until this point. Well, you're Elliott, and this is the way Elliott is, because this is the way Elliott's dad is, and Elliott's dad told do this, and society says you should do this, and this is what's right according to civilization. So that's who you are. Now go and be that. I was like, wait a fucking second. That has nothing to do with the subjective experience that's happening in my body. That, by the way, I've been cut off from for the past several decades. So being yourself is probably going to show up being real awkward and neurotic. So the first thing is get in touch with yourself. What are you actually feeling? Not what you think, not what you've been told, not how you're conditioned to behave or the choices you should make. What are you actually feeling right now? Now, experience and appreciate, trust, and now you're starting to get in touch with yourself and then share that experience with other people. Totally different place to move from.
Nice. Now, this next question, I'm glad I'm not answering it because I think I'd be stuck. Dan Bell asks, what are the 3 best books you've ever read?
Well, I've got kind of a stock answer for that, which I don't think it's fair. But I'll give you my stock answer, and then maybe if something else comes out, we'll see what happens. But the very first book that I remember having the greatest impact on my way of seeing the world was the essential writings of Ralph Waldo Emerson. The work of Emerson had a profound impact on the way I see the world. And I think more so because of the permission that Emerson gave me to think the way my body was telling me to think. See, Emerson, he's got one book, he's got one of his essays called Self-Reliance. And that was the very first one I read. And basically he says a lot of the things that I now share with people, which is you've got to cut out what civilization has caused in you because it's neurotic and begin to experience yourself and then trust yourself and make all the mistakes, quote unquote mistakes, associated with going against civilization and what everybody else has told you you should do. Because if you do trust yourself, if you are self-reliant, it's not going to look like or measure up to or be like anything that anyone else has ever done. And you're probably going to be somewhat of a outcast or rebel. But be okay with that, because the outcasts and the rebels are the ones that we end up worshiping later on. I keep bringing up Jesus, but it's so funny that we live in a Judeo-Christian society where, a significant portion of the population, although probably dwindling, call themselves Christians. And it's like, if Jesus saw your Christianity, he'd be pretty freaking pissed off, because he was such a rebellious dude that he'd say, you're fucking this up, brothers. He came and his biggest enemy was the religious structure of the time. Jesus was a crazy motherfucker. He was totally rebellious. He fought with the political structure and the religious structure. And you think he's going to come to your church? Hell no. But we respect him and we worship guys like that because he decided, I'm not following your rules. So you come here with your Christian rules, and I promise you're waiting for Jesus to come back? Oh, I wish he does. So when he looks at your Christian rules and says, you got it all fucking wrong, brothers, and then starts flipping your tables, you'll realize that the man the entire time has been telling you just what we were talking about before. The heart. Go to your insides. Go to the true you. Why is it that Jesus ends up looking like this all the time? What is he saying? He's saying, go here. They always put like a picture of a heart here. Jesus and his heart. The passion of Christ. It's here. It's not in here. I don't even remember the fucking question.
We're talking about the 3 best books.
Okay. You've got to go to yourself. Self-reliance. Be a rebel. Be you. But you got to get in touch with that first. Good. So, first book, Ralph Waldo Emerson. Another guy who's been I'm going to use 2 other guys that have been really impactful in my way of thinking and the courage that I have to share the ideas that I've got. Because of it, it would be number 1, Osho, who is an Indian mystic and another really rebellious guy, says things that pisses people off. I mean, he ended up being poisoned to death and spent several years in prison because of his wild ideas. But, that's what we do to people like that. And then we worship them later. And the next would be, the work of Alan Watts has been a great mover in my life also. So anything by Alan Watts, he's got a lot of YouTube videos because he spoke. He was a speaker. He was a teacher, and a lot of his ideas you can get on audio or on YouTube. So I know there are a couple books. They're not so much books. They're more lectures by Alan Watts. And those are the three that I would say have shaped my mind the most.
Nice. I like that. Now, for people that are listening to this, whoa, we've got bad reverb. What's happening? I've got an echo going on.
Yeah, I don't know. The audio's everything's a little screwed up here. Are you okay?
Yeah, I think it's been all right. Yeah, no, it's fine now. So people listening, they'll be expecting a nutrition book. They'll be expecting a training book. They haven't got that. They're already raging. They're like, what the... Give people one nutrition book, one strength training book where you're like, bam, read that. You need to know this. It's essential.
Well, before I do that, the reason why you're upset is because you're looking for strategies. You're looking for information. You're looking for someone to tell you what to do. What book has the right strategy for the way I should live my life or the foods that I should eat? My mission and what I'm more interested in is what kind of stories are you telling yourself? Who are you being? And then everything else you do really does not matter. You want something to do, but what I'm saying is we've got to work on who you are. Every action is measured by the sentiment from which it proceeds. Who are you being? The books that I just shared are books that go to the core of who you are. Now, what do you want to do? Hey, I'm not attached to any particular philosophy about what you should do. In fact, if you want to be a vegetarian, if you want to be a vegan, you want to be a paleo, you want to eat nothing but coconut oil and steak, I don't give a shit. The real question to me is, how's that working out for you? If you're a vegetarian and all you eat is or leaves and bugs, and you're happy, healthy, and feel good about yourself, by all means, go for it. And if all you eat is coconut oil and steak and you feel great, happy, healthy, and performing well, by all means, go for it. Now, that being said, there are a handful of books that have appeased a particular part of my ego because they're aligned with the choices I've made and what works for me, right? Sure. So the work of Weston A. Price, Nutrition and Physical Degeneration. Nice. I mean, I know that unless I'm eating meats, I have to eat meat. I can't be a vegetarian. Hey, I love vegetarians, and if it's working for you, great. I gotta eat meat because when I try vegetarian diets or I eat in a vegan style, I don't like what happens. I don't feel right. So the work of Weston A. Price supports my experience, and he did some really objective studies. He wanted to find vegetarian societies that were healthy, but he went and he studied indigenous people that he says were untouched by foods of commerce, people living off the land the way they had for several generations. And there were a few core things that he discovered about those people. And he documented them in a book called Nutrition and Physical Degeneration. And the essence of the diets that these people engaged in, no matter where it was in the world, if it was in South America, Africa, in Canada, or like the Eskimos, it did not matter. They always prized and had an element of fat-soluble vitamins in their diet, vitamin A and vitamin D. Either it would be seafood or it would be living organs from animals like liver and hearts and pancreas. There was always meat. There was always fats. And these were things that supported them in their neurological development, the development of their children. He documented their attitudes, and he said they were happy, healthy, stronger physically than all the other tribes or people that he studied that ate mostly grain or animal or grain or plant-based diets. These were his findings. His findings support my experience, so I can say yes to it. But I'm not saying no to anybody else's experience. Quite frankly, I'm not married to anything except have your experience, trust yourself, and then don't be so violent as to impose them on other people.
Nice. And this goes down to the same, the arguments in the fitness industry are relentless, and it comes down to the same theory. Like, your attitude is 100% correct. Like, if something works for you, brilliant, do it. And people will say, "Hey, Elliot, what's the best macro split to gain weight?" And you're like, "Well, I probably don't know." What you do need to do though, start somewhere and then tweak it and change it and see how the body changes, see how your energy changes, your well-being, your sleep, and then fine-tune it. I don't have an answer for you, but we could maybe start here.
It's a terrible answer. You're a terrible trainer. You're a terrible coach to tell people that. You know why? Because you just gave them responsibility. And one thing that's really uncomfortable that nobody wants is this icky, sticky, uncomfortable thing called responsibility. Guess what? You got to go and make mistakes. Guess what? You got to go try things out. Guess what? It's up to you. Now, I can give you an idea. I can tell you what worked for me. But your experience is going to be the driving force behind your results.
Definitely. Totally agree. So, have you got a time frame on this call, by the way? I forgot to ask at the beginning.
Yeah, 10 more minutes.
10 more minutes. Something else to do. Yeah, cool. Yeah. All right, well, I'll wrap up with this last answer because you'll probably maybe spend 10 minutes answering it. I thought this was quite nice because you're an entrepreneurial character. David Gallagher asks, what are your plans for the future, both in business and in your personal life?
I keep referring to this quote from in a book called Mastery by Robert Greene, where he refers to the experience of Charlie Parker, the jazz musician, and Charlie Parker gives a quote in that book that goes something like, "You got to learn the music, you got to learn the notes, and you got to learn your instrument. Take your time with that. You've got to really focus. You got to use the father when you're doing that. You got to focus, concentrate. You got to understand the mathematics of the music. You got to understand how, at a very conscious level, how to use the instrument." It says, take your time and do that. Then forget all that shit and just play. And I think that's such a profound statement because it alludes to the fact that there are two parts of this thing. There's learning the dance. And in order to learn the dance, you need instruction and you need goals, targets to hit. Okay? So if you're getting instruction, or we could even use it, I use metaphors a lot, but we could just say how it is typically in our, socioeconomic machine. You go to school, you learn to read and write, you learn how to operate within the machinery of the socioeconomic system, how to get along with people, the way society has constructed it. Then you go out into the world and you end up having to use those tools that you have at your disposal, math and science and reading and writing. And you got to find a way for yourself. And in the beginning, when you're trying to find a way for yourself, you're an apprentice. So in order to be a good apprentice, you've got to listen closely, follow directions, set goals, hit benchmarks, and become what Charlie Parker would say, that person that's learning the notes and the keys, right? And this is a long process. But then you get to a particular point where you need to forget all that shit and just play. And that's exactly where I am in my life right now. I've done the formal education that we all do. But then I went and threw myself into the river of this life, and I made a way for myself through exercising all of the tools that I was conditioned with in my childhood. There's some things I had to forget. There's some things that I had to relearn. There's some things that I had to sharpen. But it was a matter of having goals and setting myself up for benchmarks and reaching certain standards that I believed I needed in order to go and play. Right now, I'm just fucking playing, bro. I'm just playing. I'm tired of goals. I don't have any goals. There are things that I would like to happen. There are things that I would like to avoid, but I'm not attached to any of them. I'm not working diligently using the father to crush away at something that has to happen.
Just to interject, would you feel that part of you changed when you became a dad? That you're more living in the moment and just enjoying what's around you and what you've created?
Not so much, because my first couple children came about when I was struggling, and it was like, I can't enjoy my children because I can't barely put food on the table.
Okay.
So I was still hitting benchmarks at that time. I still had goals. I mean, there were financial goals and there were business goals. There were things that I needed to do. Now that I've done that, I have no problem saying that I've reached all my goals in that regard. Now, it doesn't mean that my life is over, but I'm in a place now where I can kind of, like Charlie Parker says, I can just play. I can just dance. And it doesn't mean that I'm not doing anything constructive. It means that I've let go of this neurotic drive to achieve something, and I'm having fun with all that I've created. I make more videos. I make better videos. I experiment with my ways of presentation. There are things that I'm doing with my family that I didn't have the time and the energy to do before. Experiencing things that are pleasurable, experimenting with things that might cause pain and frustration, but I know as in the same way that those things that are unpleasurable bring pleasure because of the experience associated with getting through those things that are not pleasurable. But I do them to myself. I'm playing. Do you see? So what's next for me is just watch me play. If you enjoy watching me play, then let's dance.
I like that. I love it. It's brilliant. Well, thank you very much for being on my podcast, and this is obviously going to go up on YouTube today. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. You're a legend. We'll leave it at that. For people that want to follow your work, what are your links?
Just you're gonna watch me play mostly on YouTube and Facebook. So my YouTube channels and Facebook. That's kind of where I'm playing.
Good, and that's Elliott Hulse. Do you have two YouTube channels? Is it Elliott Hulse and Strength Camp?
Yeah, the Elliott Hulse one is actually Elliott Said What. So if you go to YouTube and put in Elliott Said What, that's the actual URL of the channel. I created that channel simply because, like I said, this is all an experiment to me. I'm not right about anything. I would hate to take that position of Elliott Hulse is right. Elliott Hulse knows something. Elliott Hulse doesn't know shit. Elliott Hulse is just playing, and if you like playing with him, let's go. So when I created that channel, it was like I wanted to talk about things beyond just lifting weights, like the stuff that we end up talking about here, just because it really is what's most fascinating to me. So I positioned it as Elliott Said What, basically like, what the hell is this guy talking about? And that's what you'll experience when you go there. And then the other one is Strength Camp, where I'm talking mostly about fitness and strength and stuff.
Nice. Well, they're both fantastic resources. So if anyone that's listening hopefully gets over and checks out your channel. And if they're watching this on YouTube, then there is links below straight to Elliott's channel. All that's left for me to do is say thank you very much, and I enjoy watching you play in the future.
Cool, thanks.
Hey everyone, Ben Coomber Radio, episode 54. Me and Anna Sward from ProteinPal.com are back in the house with some awesome questions today. Anna, hello.
Hi, Ben.